Hello, everyone. This is just going to be an update on my election prediction originally posted in mid-September. You'd think a lot would have changed over the past month and a half. I mean, President Trump had COVID, we had two debates, but this election has been relatively inelastic. Um, but there are a few key rating changes that I'd like to go over here 1 week before the election. Most notably, some of these states in this shade of red or this shade of blue, I'm gaining more confidence for their candidate to win the election. So I'm going to move some of those over to safe. Utah is safe now. Arkansas is safe now, just based off of new polling. The rest of those Republican states are going to stay in likely. Um, and then for Vice President Biden, New Mexico moves over to safe. Those are just states that, I mean, Trump could come with around 15% within that of winning the states, but they're pretty solid for the candidate that I put them in the column for. The big rating changes are woohoo, Nevada moving over to likely. No, that is one I want to do. Also, I'm going to move this one over to safe for Biden. Okay, so the big rating changes are in these four states here: Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, and Texas. I had them all as lean Trump states back in September. Three of them have a ratings change. I've got Georgia, no. Georgia moving down to tilt, Ohio moving down to tilt, and then Iowa is actually going to be a tilt for Biden at this point, just based off of new polling and trends in those states, early voting numbers. That looks to be about right, which then obviously puts Biden in a little bit more control for the election based off of electoral votes. And he's not done. North Carolina, I'm also going to move into the tilt Biden column. So Vice President Biden is in better shape now than he was in mid-September when he was already in pretty good shape for winning the election. I mean, the popular vote looks pretty much all on lock for him. It's just going to be a matter of these key swing states swinging to Biden away from Trump like they did in 2016. Obviously, these three Midwestern states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, were key to President Trump winning back in 2016. They all look like they're going to go for Biden. I'm actually going to move Wisconsin and Michigan into the the likely column. Pennsylvania's going to stay in the lean just because it's the closest out of the three. I think they could all run pretty similar to each other, but just leaving the ratings like that to indicate that Pennsylvania will likely be the closest out of the three of those states. But again, probably running 5 to 6, 7, 8% in favor of Biden at this point. But other than that, those are the only ratings changes I have in this relatively inelastic presidential race. But in this video, I also wanted to touch on the Senate elections. With the Democrats looking like they're going to take the presidency, also pretty much guaranteed to retain the majority in the House, the Senate's going to be a key player in the next coming 2 years to determine policy in America. But it also looks like the Democrats are in shape to potentially have the majority here. And remember, if they win the presidency, they only need a 50-50 tie, assuming that Vice President Kamala Harris would break those ties in favor of the Democrats. Um, so this is a relatively favorable map for them, but it shouldn't have been. We've got states that I had in likely or safe states for President Trump that are going to be more competitive in their Senate races than they will for the presidency. So that's states like Montana, which I'm going to have in lean, Kansas, which I'm going to have in lean as well, and Texas also in lean. States that the Democrats are performing pretty well in, considering the voting demographics of those states. I still think that the Republicans are favored to win those states. But I mean, Montana and Kansas getting close for a Democrat senator is something that a lot of people did not expect to see in 2020. But here we are. Another state that fits that mold is South Carolina. Lindsey Graham, thought to be a strong incumbent years ago, is now facing a huge challenge with a lot of money pouring into his Democratic opponent. That's also going to be down in the lean category. So that's 46 for the Republicans. The rest of these states, they need to be really careful with. I think Colorado is going to be in the likely column for John Hickenlooper. At this point, I'd have Minnesota in the likely column and Michigan in the likely column. Michigan could get a little more narrow. John James running again for that seat as he did in 2018. But as for now, it looks like Gary Peters has a pretty solid hold on that. So it's probably going to come down to these remaining six states. I'm actually going to put Alaska into the lean column. The Republican incumbent Dan Sullivan is actually running against an independent Al Gross for that seat. Um, so not the traditional Republican Democratic advantage, though Al Gross does share very many values with the Democratic Party and has been receiving funding from them. So that leaves each party at 47. So the question then becomes, what are these other six seats going to swing as? Arizona, as for now, I'm going to have in the lean category for Mark Kelly against the incumbent Republican Martha McSally. Maine, same deal. Sarah Gideon running against the incumbent Susan Collins. I'm going to have that one in the lean column as well. Susan Collins, obviously, as a Republican running in a pretty safe state for a Democrat. Is in some trouble, especially given some recent votes where she's alienated both parties in her home state based off of um, her willingness to vote with Trump or vote against Trump. Um, so Iowa and North Carolina are going to be pretty close. At this point, I'm going to put both of them in the Democratic column, both at tilt margins. Both of these I had as Republican states even 2 or 3 weeks ago. Um, but now new polling and just trends. I mean, especially in Iowa, there was a really bad debate performance out of Republican incumbent Joni Ernst. Democrat looks pretty solid there. I'm going to move that over to the Democratic column, which officially gives them the majority. Um, and this will likely be where the Senate stands on election night. Because in Georgia, you may see that there's two elections, the normal Georgia election and the special election. In Georgia, if a candidate does not receive 50%, that election goes to a runoff later on. And so at this point, I don't think that either election is going to see a candidate eclipse 50%. Actually, I mean, it'll be close in the normal Georgia one. Um, I mean, that one's pretty much a two-person race for it between the Republican and the Democrat. I'm going to keep that in the tilt Republican challenge or in tilt Republican column for now. Um, it's going to be close though whether or not either candidate will hit 50% there, just given other performances by down party or down ballot candidates. And then the other one is actually an interesting race because the Democrats have started to unite around one candidate for that special election race, but the Republicans have two candidates both exceeding 20% in polling right now. Um, I don't think the Democrat's going to hit 50%, but it's going to be a matter of which opponent the Democrat will face in the runoff. Obviously, the incumbent, Kelly Loeffler, um, is an interesting candidate. She was appointed to that seat a while ago, and that's why they're having a special election. She's facing a challenge from Representative Doug Collins, um, who looks like he's about drawn even. Loeffler had the lead a little while ago, but it looks like it's starting to narrow up. So it's just going to be a matter of which candidate advances to the runoff. As of right now, I'm going to have that also in the tilt Republican column, just because, I mean, it's a Republican state and we don't know which Republican candidate's going to face against Warnock. Doug Collins would have a better chance at winning. Um, but just for now, we're going to keep that in the tilt column just because of the uncertainty of a runoff. So that's where the Senate stands with a Democratic majority. But I mean, many of these seats could flip other ways, just depending on what happens on election night. So that's the state of politics right now. I might make a little video later this week on the Indiana governor's race, maybe just a little touch on the House of Representatives, though it's pretty clear that the Democrats are going to retain control of that. So I don't know if I'm even going to put time into that one. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this. We're a week away from the election now. Assuming this video goes out Tuesday night. If it goes out Wednesday, then we're less than a week away. It feels like this campaign has gone on forever. So it's going to be good to finally see results on the table for this election. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you all for watching and have a great final week of the election season.